Women have long been taught to become something: gentle, humble, well-mannered, capable. They grow up in pre-assigned roles, which means shrinking themselves to fit the gaze of others. But few teach them how to love themselves, not through empty slogans, but through the courageous journey of confronting the shadow within. Carl Jung once said that deep within, we are not only driven by societal expectations, but also by archetypal images rooted in the collective unconscious. They wear masks and live as if their true selves were something wrong, something to be hidden. So what truly happens when a woman stops living to please others and begins living for herself? In today's video, we will explore 9 profound things a woman stops doing when she truly loves herself. Stay until the end. Because number 7, seemingly small, is the secret door that unlocks the depth you've been avoiding. And perhaps it will change the way you see your inner world forever. Number 1, she stops trying to please everyone. When a woman hasn't yet learned to love herself, she often lives like a silent mirror, reflecting others' expectations. She doesn't exist as a being with boundaries, will, or soul, but as a surface of water where anyone can look and see themselves, while she remains invisible. She learns to read others' eyes as if they were a compass for her worth. She smiles when she doesn't want to, nods when her heart resists, stays silent when she should speak. Every decision is a quiet calculation. If I do this, will they still like me? Approval becomes a spiritual drug, making her feel alive, yet hollowing her out. Carl Jung referred to this as the dominance of the persona, the social mask we wear to be accepted. For many women, this mask is tied to the image of the dutiful daughter, the understanding wife, the agreeable colleague, the lovable woman, an archetype elevated by the collective unconscious as the standard. But Jung warned, the danger is that people become identical with their personas, the professor with his textbook, the tenor with his voice. Wear it too long, and you forget the real face beneath. A woman in this phase often feels like a phone perpetually on silent mode. No one knows what she thinks, needs, or wants, and worse, neither does she. But then comes a turning point. Not always a grand event, sometimes just an exhausted morning when she looks in the mirror and no longer recognizes the eyes staring back. Awakening doesn't come with fireworks, but with an unbearable emptiness. And in that emptiness, a quiet voice rises. What about me? That's the moment she stops trying to please everyone. This doesn't mean she becomes rude, selfish, or cold. On the contrary, she becomes authentic. She stops agreeing just to agree, stops forcing smiles to make others comfortable. She begins to choose her kindness, like a gardener selecting flowers to nurture, instead of pouring water over every barren field. Jungian psychology refers to this as the first step in individuation, the process of shedding the false self to approach the true one. By stopping the need to please all, she cuts the tangled threads between herself and collective expectations. She doesn't reject love, she rejects conditional love. And strangely, the more she dares to displease others, the more peace she finds. For the first time, she stops betraying herself for harmony, stops trading self-respect for fleeting praise, stops living as a good person, scripted by others, and starts living as a real person, even if no one applauds. Like an instrument once tuned to others' ears, she now begins to play her sound. Not everyone may like her music, but it's honest, wild, uncompromising, and that makes her more beautiful than any mask she ever wore. And as that sound rises, another shift naturally follows. She stops apologizing for having boundaries. Number 2. She stops apologizing for having boundaries. Before, every time she said no, her heart clenched as if she'd committed a crime. A part of her, the part accustomed to pleasing, whispered, "If I refuse, they'll be hurt. If I keep my distance, they'll think I'm selfish. If I assert my limits, they'll leave." So she backtracked. She pushed her needs aside, smiled, and made room for others to step in, even when they trampled the parts of her that needed protection most. Carl Jung said, "A man who has not passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them." For a woman, that inferno isn't aggression, but the guilt of daring to protect her sacred self. Boundaries, meant to be the protective perimeter of her being, are labeled as coldness, distance, and even cruelty. But boundaries aren't stone walls. They're like spiritual skin, soft yet resilient, shielding the world from entering too deeply into places not ready to receive it. A woman who loves herself doesn't build barriers. She creates a door with a lock, opening it only when she chooses, not when someone knocks hard enough. She realizes, if love demands she dissolve, it isn't love. If a relationship makes her feel she must shrink to fit, it's not a connection, it's control. And every time she apologizes for her boundaries, she signs an unspoken contract. I agree to lose myself to keep external peace. If you've done this too, pause for a moment. Not to blame yourself, but to listen. What boundary within you is waiting to be acknowledged? Imagine you're a house with many rooms. How many people have you let into your most private spaces, just because you feared being left behind? And which door in you is waiting to be locked with self-respect? A real-life example you might relate to. Before, when a colleague texted after hours, she'd reply instantly, fearing being seen as unprofessional. Now she puts her phone down, knowing her rest is something she deserves, not selfishness. She no longer needs a valid reason for space. The reason is, I need it, and that's enough. Jung believed true freedom comes when an individual steps out of the collective unconscious, where women are defined as endlessly soft, infinitely forgiving. But forgiveness without boundaries leads only to self-dissolution. Loving oneself is knowing where others end and you begin. There's nothing wrong with being a land with limits. What's bad is pretending you're an ocean, letting others swim freely in it, unaware that your waters can run dry. So she stops apologizing. She knows, if changing her essence is the price to keep someone, it's better to let go. And in the moment she holds firm to her boundaries, something strange happens. Those who exploited her step back. Those who loved her for gain drift away. But those who truly love stay, respect, and knock with care. Taylor Swift is a rare example of a woman who dared to draw clear boundaries between herself and a world consuming her as a product. In her documentary Miss Americana, Taylor shared that learning to say no, to refuse without apologizing, was the pivotal shift that preserved her identity amid the whirlwind of fame and expectations. She said, "You can't just keep putting your hand out and saying, 'Yes, I'll take it, I'll do it, I'll be it,' just to make people happy. I had to stop." She was once a girl who lived to be adored by her audience. But after betrayals, smear campaigns, and harsh attacks from the entertainment industry, Taylor began setting firm boundaries with the media the public, and even close relationships. And perhaps you don't need to be a star to understand that feeling. Whether under the spotlight or in quiet relationships, every woman has at some point apologized for her boundaries. Number 3, she stops trying to be someone else to be loved. But sometimes, boundaries aren't just violated from outside, they're blurred by ourselves. And now, she faces a deeper truth. All this time, she's lived as a borrowed version, a shadow shaped only to be loved. She became the compliant mirror, reflecting exactly what others wanted, never too dazzling. Meeting a man who liked cute, gentle women, she softened like silk. Meeting one who admired independent, strong women, she hardened like steel. Not because she was deceitful, but because the craving to be loved made her stretch endlessly, as if she were clay to be molded by another's hands. Carl Jung called this identification with the persona, the mask we wear to survive society, but when clung to too tightly, it swallows the true self. Jung warned, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Indeed, because when you're used to being loved for being like someone, living as yourself always carries the fear, if I stop being what they want, will they stay? A woman in this phase often feels like a beautiful dress in a shop window. Everyone admires, everyone likes, but no one wants to wear it through life's sun and storms. The dress is designed to impress, not to live in. She enters relationships like an audition, not to connect, but to be chosen. And the more she's chosen, the more confused she becomes. Do they love me, or the role I'm playing? Because love comes easily when she wears the mask. But whenever she reveals something real, a dissenting opinion, an unhealed wound, a tired day when she can't please, the cracks appear quickly. Until one day, the contradictions pile into an exhaustion she can't name. She realizes, no matter how many stay, she feels alone. Because they're staying for a version of her, not her. She feels like a hit song everyone listens to, but no one knows the lyrics to. And from that moment, she stops. She stops trying to be someone else to be loved. She no longer twists herself to fit expectations, no longer edits her words, attitudes, or dreams to hold someone's gaze. She begins to peel off the layers of pretense she's carried for years and touches the bare face she had forgotten. That face may not suit everyone's taste. It may not be high value by any standard, but it's real. And to her, truth becomes more precious than conditional love. An example. Before, when dating, she'd say she loved hiking or reading philosophy, though she just wanted a quiet afternoon at a cafe rewatching an old movie. Now, if someone doesn't like the real her, she doesn't reshape herself. She smiles and walks away. Because she knows, love doesn't demand you change your essence. It embraces you like a seed already whole. Psychology says that to grow, we need accurate mirroring from others, being seen as we truly are. But if you live in a role, that mirroring never comes. You'll forever wonder why the love you receive never touches the real you. When she stops trying to be someone else to be loved, a new space opens, where connections no longer come from impressing, but from resonating. People come, not because she's their ideal partner, but because they sense something rare. She is herself, and I love her for that. It's no longer love born of effort. It's love born of honest presence. Number 4, she stops running from her shadow. But like a garden, That authenticity only blooms when the soil has been tilled, even the hardest, darkest, and dampest layers. Before, whenever she felt anger, jealousy, selfishness, or weakness, she immediately denied it. No, I'm not like that. I shouldn't be like that. She suppressed, repressed, and rejected those emotions as if they were stains on the pristine mirror she was trying to preserve to be loved. But Jung warned, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Jung called this the shadow, the part of ourselves pushed into the unconscious because it doesn't fit the image we want to maintain. The shadow is the repressed emotions, desires, and wounds. It doesn't vanish just because we ignore it. It accumulates, swirling beneath the surface like an undercurrent in a river, and when unacknowledged, it rises in unexplained anger, overreactions, or relationships that repeat the same pain. Modern behavioral psychology confirms avoiding negative emotions over time increases anxiety, depression, and inner disconnection. Conversely, actively accepting and observing emotions stabilizes the nervous system, reduces stress, and fosters a sense of control over behavior. The transformation doesn't come under stage lights, but in a quiet night, when she looks in the mirror and sees not just exhaustion, but an invitation. It's time. For the first time, she doesn't look away. She dares to look within, where suppressed grievances, swallowed anger, and unnamed desires reside. She no longer judges or tries to fix them. She simply listens. Like an old storage room untouched for years, a single small candle is enough to illuminate the hidden corners. She realizes the darkness isn't as terrifying as she imagined. It's not a monster. It's the abandoned child, still sitting there, waiting to be embraced. Every intense emotion, every suppressed instinct, when acknowledged, becomes a key to compassion, clarity, and inner strength. Before, she blamed herself for her anger at a partner who didn't text back, at a disrespectful colleague, at careless friends. She saw it as a weakness. But when she steps back and observes, she sees that anger as the voice of violated boundaries, a warning bell that she's abandoning herself to please others. So instead of suppressing it, she listens. She writes, meditates, and walks in the rain so no one sees her tears. Not to hide, but to connect with the part of herself she once rejected. Carl Jung believed that becoming whole doesn't lie in perfection, but in integrating both light and darkness. A woman who loves herself isn't one who never feels anger, fear, or hurt, but one who no longer flees when they arise. She stops seeing emotions as enemies. She understands every emotion has a reason for existing, and each time she bravely sits with her pain, she draws her true self a little closer. If, right now, a part of you feels called out, hold on to that feeling and mark it with a like or subscribe as a promise to yourself. I won't abandon myself again. Loving oneself, it turns out, isn't a quest for the brightest light. It's the courageous journey of stepping into your darkness and illuminating it with presence. And when the lights in her house are turned on, she realizes, she doesn't need to look through anyone else's window to know she's alive. Thus, when she loves herself, she also stops battling other women. Number 5. She stops competing with other women. From childhood, women grow up in a culture of silent comparison, where everything is ranked, though no one says it aloud. No law dictates it, but it seeps through every glance, every seemingly harmless comment. That woman knows how to keep her husband. she's your age and already a boss. Comparison becomes society's unspoken language, from body shape, skin tone, femininity, lifestyle, romantic taste, to speech. Everything is placed on an invisible scale. Social media, traditional media, even friendships sustain this system of measurement. Who's better, who's ideal, who's admirable, who's merely a backdrop for others to shine. And so, women, instead of seeing each other as allies, are often programmed to view each other as silent rivals. No words are needed, just a glance, a subtle comparison, an unnamed unease when someone shines brighter in a crowd. When a woman hasn't yet learned to love herself, she easily falls into this trap. With an inner void, she must look outward to gauge her worth. A stunning Instagram post, a colleague praised in a meeting, or even her partner's glance at another woman can make her feel less. No one needs to diminish her. She shrinks herself because someone else shines. Carl Jung called this a symptom of an incomplete ego. When the self isn't stable, it sees any difference as a threat. But as individuation begins, a woman stops trying to be someone else. She doesn't need to win. She only needs to be herself, clear, deep, and real. She understands. A rose doesn't compete with a lotus to be beautiful. And if a man chooses another over her, it doesn't diminish her. She's a different flower with a unique fragrance. And she blooms, whether anyone notices or not. Modern psychology calls this an abundance mindset. When a woman believes life isn't a limited pie where one's gain is her loss, she stops fighting for scraps. She builds her table with food, flavors, and rhythms that suit her soul. Competition stems from feeling not enough. But loving herself fills her from within, so she doesn't need to take from others. And thus, she becomes someone who can genuinely uplift other women. Instead of seeing them as rivals, she views them as different mirrors, each reflecting a sacred facet of femininity the world needs. And if today she's not the one noticed, that's fine. She's busy shining in her own way. The miracle is, when women uplift each other this way, something ancient awakens. A collective wisdom, once fractured by competition and division, is rekindled. She doesn't just help others stand. She breaks the silent legacy of rivalry society has passed down to women for generations. A seamstress in a small market chose this path. Instead of hoarding her techniques or keeping customers to herself, she shared every stitch with newcomers. Some days, when her stall was too busy, she referred customers to the shop next door. When asked why she didn't keep it all, she smiled. Giving doesn't mean losing. If I can do it, others deserve to as well. In a world that often pits women against each other for every customer, every coin, she chose to create space for others to stand. She shared customers, praised others, taught her craft, not to prove she was better, but because she believed women are truly strong when they lift each other. She sees herself in this. She may not sew or sell, but in choosing to uplift a friend, praise a colleague, or step aside to let another woman shine, she's unraveling the silent thread of rivalry that has long bound women. This story doesn't just inspire, it reminds us. True femininity isn't born to compete. And when that femininity is restored to its essence, meant to expand, resonate, heal, a woman returns to listen to what she had forgotten, her intuition. Number 6, she stops dismissing her intuition. True femininity isn't just born from compassion, but from a quiet confidence that has taken root within her. A newfound trust, not outward, but inward. She begins to listen to a voice once overlooked, drowned out by reason, logic, and the rationality society imposes. This is when she stops dismissing her intuition. Intuition isn't vague magic or weak sentimentality, as some believe. It's the mind's oldest language, encoded from experience, emotion, memory, and the unconscious. Carl Jung considered intuition one of the 4 fundamental psychological functions, alongside thinking, feeling, and sensation. But in a society that exalts reason and structure, women are taught to have proof, think clearly, analyze thoroughly before deciding. So intuition, that subtle instinct like a biological radar, is sidelined, labeled vague. She once did this. She felt something off in a relationship, but stayed because he hasn't done anything wrong. She sensed she should turn left in her career, but lacking a clear reason, turned right as others advised. Time and again, she paid quietly with years lived out of alignment because she dismissed the whisper her inner self was sending. Before continuing, take a quiet moment. Recall the last time you followed what felt right, despite advice, logic, or the crowd. What happened? And the next time your intuition speaks, will you trust it or stay silent? You can mark this moment with a comment. We're always here to listen. But one day, not after a grand event, but in a simple, quiet pause after a noisy conversation, she hears it again. A small, light, yet clear sensation, like light touching skin. And instead of brushing it off, she pauses, listens, and trusts. Intuition doesn't shout. It doesn't write reports. It doesn't present a 3-step plan. It's a feeling in the chest, a vibration in the gut, a subtle shift when something feels off. It arrives like a bird's instinct to change course before a storm, tied to a deep connection with nature. Modern psychology calls this the body's intelligence. Intuition isn't separate from reason. It's a distinct form of wisdom, operating at a speed logic can't match. Neuroscientific studies show that decisions guided by trained intuition, combined with knowledge, are often more accurate and energy efficient than prolonged analysis. So she begins to trust her inner signals. Entering a room and feeling cold despite warm weather, she no longer explains it. She observes. Talking to someone and sensing something off, she doesn't force herself to give them another chance. She trusts what she feels. When an idea makes her shiver without knowing why, she doesn't need a reason. She knows. Her soul has spoken. She no longer needs others' agreement to validate what she feels. Intuition becomes her compass, not guiding her to where everyone goes, but to where her true self awaits. And the miracle is, the more she trusts her intuition, the less she feels lost. Not because every choice is right, but because each is hers, not born of fear or others' expectations. Number 7, she stops using busyness to avoid facing herself. Here she also begins to understand another truth. What makes her lose her way isn't a lack of answers, but a lack of space to hear herself. This isn't a loud turning point. It doesn't arrive through a dramatic event or in someone else's gaze. It comes when she's standing amid an ordinary day and realizes it's been too long since she truly sat with herself. And in that realization, she stops filling every gap in her day with tasks, stops using busyness as an excuse to avoid confronting herself. Busyness is the most sophisticated form of escape. It's celebrated by society, equated with worth. The busier you are, the more important you seem, The less time you have, the more admirable you are. And she once believed this. She turned a packed schedule into a suit of armor. Work, meetings, messages to reply to, appointments to attend, all made her feel she existed. But the truth is, she was running, not towards something, but away from herself. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens. But looking inward requires stillness. And in this world, stillness is what many fear most. Not because it's boring, but because in it, there's no one else but ourselves. No one to blame. No task to use as an excuse. Just us, bare and unexplained." She once thought stopping would mean falling behind, but the truth is, when she no longer forces herself to keep up the relentless pace, she finally hears the sounds within, the sigh held back after every forced smile, the whisper each night. Who am I living for? Busyness was once her way of justifying her disorientation. For example, when a relationship grew cold, she dove into work instead of facing the question, "Am I still loved?" When she felt empty, she planned trips, workshops, and new goals just to avoid confronting that nameless void. Here, I have a question for you. If you truly paused long enough to listen to yourself, what are you afraid you might discover? And are you sure busyness is something you chose, or is it what you use to avoid living authentically? Busyness numbs intuition. It's like turning on too many screens at once. You can't hear any single sound. But when she begins to quiet the noise, she hears a knock from within. And this time, she doesn't walk away. She starts carving out time without purpose, walking with no destination, sitting still without her phone, writing thoughts without editing, even crying without reason. Not because she's idle, but because she's returning. Modern psychology calls this restorative stillness. In the brain, it's when the default mode network activates, allowing self-reflection, memory restructuring, and emotional recovery. She doesn't know the term, but she feels something shift. She stops striving. She stops running. And in that pause, she touches something busyness never gave her: truth. Now, she doesn't take pride in always being busy. She takes pride in creating space to be fully present with herself, not to prove anything, but simply to be. Because sometimes the bravest act isn't doing more, but stopping long enough to see herself more clearly. Number 8. She stops confusing her worth with the roles she plays, and in that pause, amidst the silence no longer drowned by the rush of life, she begins to uncover a deeper truth. All this time, she has confused her worth with the roles she plays. She once thought, if she didn't excel at her job, she wouldn't be respected. If she weren't a dutiful daughter, she wouldn't be loved. If she weren't a perfect partner, a devoted mother, or an ever-present friend, her existence would fade into insignificance. So she wrapped herself in layers of roles like beautiful but heavy garments, as if they were her very skin. And she was proud of them, until they exhausted her. Have you ever asked yourself, if one day you no longer had to carry any role, would you still feel worthy of existing in this world? Carl Jung once said, "The greatest tragedy of the family is the unlived lives of the parents." But for her, the tragedy wasn't in what she hadn't done, but in how she had lived so many lives for others, yet never lived as herself. She realizes her worth isn't the sum of what she achieves, but the essence of who she is, even when she does nothing at all. This is what modern society often makes us forget. In a world that demands productivity, success, and utility, women are programmed to believe their value lies only in serving others or accomplishing something. Confusing roles with worth is like an artist believing she's only lovable when performing on stage. But one day, when the lights dim, the applause fades, and the auditorium empties, that artist must face the question, do I still exist when no one's watching? And she faced that question too. Painful, disorienting, but ultimately she found the answer. Yes, I'm still here, and that is enough. Take Michelle Obama, for example. For 8 years as First Lady of the United States, she was seen as a perfect role model, educated, elegant, dedicated, and impactful. But after leaving the White House, Michelle shared in the podcast Work in Progress. For the first time in my life, all of my choices are for me. Not what I had to do, not what other people wanted me to do. In that journey, she revealed a powerful truth. True worth doesn't lie in the roles assigned, but in being authentic when the spotlight fades. Michelle wrote books, shared her vulnerabilities, and spoke of the loneliness and depression she once hid. No longer the woman representing a nation, she returned to being a woman learning to live authentically, and perhaps, in that moment, she reached her deepest influence. This story isn't just that of a former First Lady, it's the story of anyone who ever thought their meaning came only from being useful. But when a woman dares to shed her roles and stay with herself, she doesn't lose her worth. She rediscovers it. Like Michelle, she doesn't need to step out of the White House to know the relief of shedding an overburdened role. A single quiet moment in an ordinary day is enough for her to realize. She is worthy of existing, even without playing any part. From that moment, she no longer enters life like someone performing a role. She steps in as someone who has returned to herself, with a truth that needs no title and a worth that needs no conditions. It is there that she meets the person she's long avoided, herself. Number 9. She stops fearing herself. Until now, she didn't realize how much she feared herself, because she saw herself as vast, layered, complex, and no one taught her how to love a being so full of contradictions. She is both gentle and sharp, both strong and wounded, both craving love and fearing being held back. And deep within, parts of her were labeled unacceptable, so she learned to distance herself from herself, as if that would make living easier. She once avoided herself like one avoids a dark room where monsters might lurk or memories she didn't want to revisit. But then she realized, there are no monsters, only parts of her humanity that haven't been heard. A woman who follows our channel once left a message sharing, "Whenever I felt jealous or afraid of losing someone, I swallowed it down. I wanted to be independent enough that no one had to be responsible for my emotions." She smiled when she wanted to cry, said, "I'm fine," when she desperately needed someone to stay. But what she didn't know was that denial was what made her anxious. Because someone who isn't allowed to be themselves, no matter how loved, will always feel alone. But gradually, as she slowed down, stopped being busy, stopped running from her emotions, something remarkable happened. The parts she'd hidden began to speak. Not loudly, not with screams, just small sounds, a sudden joy at sunlight through leaves, a choke at an old song, a restlessness beside someone her heart no longer felt safe with. And this time, she didn't brush them aside. She didn't try to explain them. She listened and stayed. She touched herself with kindness, like an attic locked for years, which everyone warned not to open because it's full of messy, outdated, perhaps shameful things. But when she finally opened it and lit it up, what she found wasn't chaos, but an untold story. The story of a child who tried too hard to be loved, a young woman who sacrificed dreams to avoid disappointing others, a woman who was always fine to avoid seeming weak. And now, all those imperfect, untidy parts are returning to become valid pieces of her soul's home. She stops fearing herself because she understands everything within her has a reason to exist. Even the parts labeled too much, too sensitive, and too different are the vibrant data of her soul. Jung called this individuation, the process of uniting all the fragmented pieces of ourselves into a whole. And only when she dares to face herself directly, without avoidance or correction, does she truly begin that process. And so, for the first time, she no longer lives as if she's a project to be renovated. She lives like a primal forest, dense, complex, wild, but sacred. Loving herself isn't a destination, it's a state of returning to the natural rhythm of her breath before it was distorted by expectations, standards, and the fear of being left behind. When a woman dares to live as herself, she doesn't become a better version, but a fuller one. In an era where comparison and invisible pressures make so many lose their way, the journey of self-love becomes a revolutionary act. Because when a woman no longer lives to be accepted, but to be fully present, she creates a rare kind of peace. A peace that makes others, simply by stepping into its energy, begin to believe, perhaps I too am worthy of living as myself. Now, when all the noise has faded and it's just you and yourself, do you dare to live a life that needs no applause, but is filled with authentic presence? Have you, as a woman, ever wondered why some relationships where you poured your all are forgotten as if they never existed, while certain women, with just a single appearance, live on forever in a man's memory? The answer isn't skill, it's not appearance, nor is it manipulation. It all begins in the unconscious. In the archetypal images, she awakens in his soul, even if only for a fleeting moment. And in love, what a man fails to understand, fails to grasp, is precisely what he can never forget. This is not a video teaching you how to play psychological games. This is a journey into your darkness, from which you radiate an inimitable energy, the kind that makes a man feel your absence even when he's lying beside someone else. And without keeping you waiting any longer, in this video, I will reveal 10 silent yet profoundly powerful attitudes that can make any man unable to control his longing for you, even long after you've gone. Are you ready to step into the realm of symbols, shadows, and nameless urges? Stay until the end, for each attitude here is a doorway into your very self. Part 1. The psychological context, the hidden roots of distraction. Every woman has likely experienced at least once the helplessness of giving everything, only to receive nothing but cold forgetfulness from the man she loves. Like moths drawn to a flame, the more they try to impress, to prove their worth, the more distant they feel from the one they long to be close to. But Jung said, "What we do not make conscious emerges later as fate." These women think they're striving to control love, but in truth, they're being controlled by old, unconscious wounds. That's why they remain trapped in a vicious cycle. The more they chase, the further their goal slips away. Imagine stepping into a perfect room where everything is meticulously arranged with precision. At first, you might feel satisfied, but soon, a sense of suffocation creeps in, because deep within human instinct lies a craving for surprise, for instability, for the incomplete. Love is the same. Attraction never lies in polished appearances or perfect devotion, but in the unfinished spaces, the missing pieces that awaken a man's desire to explore. Jung called these the shadow, the unconscious parts we hide even from ourselves. A man can't stop thinking about a woman who has left him, not because she was perfect, but because she stirred in him a sense of lack, a persistent curiosity he could never quite reach. Have you ever noticed how some women attract men by constantly catering to their emotions, while others become an obsessive mirage with just a few fleeting moments? The only difference lies in how they confront their inner wounds and insecurities. A woman who constantly seeks validation from others is, in truth, neglecting herself, as if she's trying to fill a cracked vessel. The more water she pours, the faster it drains. In contrast, a woman who understands her psyche exudes a magnetic allure. She doesn't try to fix herself through others, but becomes an unanswered question, awakening in a man the instinct to explore, conquer, and deeply understand. Jung once said, "There can be no transforming of darkness into light, and of apathy into movement without emotion." A woman's true power never lies in outward attempts to draw attention, but in the courage to look within, to recognize her wounds, accept them, and transform them into quiet, steadfast confidence. That's the deeper reason why a woman who seems to make no effort can linger in a man's memory, because what she leaves behind isn't an image or words, but an awakening of parts he had long forgotten in his unconscious. This is the secret buried deep in the psychology of love, where desire is created not by trying to possess, but by a conscious letting go, a mysterious silence that leaves a man forever wondering, who is she, truly? Part 2. The mechanism of longing, born from the unconscious. So, what makes these mysterious silences so powerful that they create a kind of longing a man can't even explain to himself? If love were merely the satisfaction of the senses or a fleeting comfort, why do we still yearn for those who caused us pain, those who left without ever fully explaining? Jung believed the unconscious always knows first, especially the things our conscious mind tries to deny. Longing, too, doesn't arise from clear memories, but from the shadowy, elusive corners of the soul, from the places we least expect. The male mind, contrary to common belief, isn't a realm of cold logic, but a mystical landscape filled with symbols and unnamed images. In the unconscious, a woman's image isn't stored as a sharp photograph, but as a hovering silhouette between dream and reality, like moonlight, gentle yet forever out of reach. And precisely because it cannot be grasped, that silhouette becomes haunting, more profound than anything a man has ever held in his everyday life. Picture a man's longing as a deep underground lake, its surface calm and serene. But beneath lies a silent, powerful current. A single small pebble, a woman's simple gesture like a fleeting glance that pierces his soul, can create ripples that spread endlessly. Those waves travel deep into the psyche, weaving through the most hidden corners of the unconscious, becoming a wordless, persistent longing that no language can capture. Jung explained that the unconscious is like a dark room where we store forgotten relics of the past, memories and emotions we've buried, unfulfilled secret desires. When a woman enters a man's life with a single gesture, a silence, or an ungraspable mystery, she unknowingly touches one of those relics. Instantly, a surge of powerful emotion rises, shaking him deeply without him understanding why. This is the unconscious mechanism Jung called projection. The woman becomes a mirror reflecting a man's deepest, most secret desires. So when she leaves, he doesn't just lose a person. He loses a part of himself he had only just glimpsed through her. Unconscious longing cannot be controlled by reason or will. It seeps into dreams, into fleeting daily thoughts, becoming the most beautiful yet painful obsession in a man's inner life. This is the kind of longing every woman wishes to inspire, but not everyone understands how it works. To ignite it, you must first understand this unconscious mechanism before learning how to touch it. And that's exactly what you'll explore in the attitudes to come. Before we move on, thank you for joining us on this journey. Which of these insights has struck you the most? If something resonates, it's a sign your unconscious is opening. Please like and subscribe to hold on to this moment, and the attitudes I'll reveal next aren't just behaviors. They're the emotional DNA that can awaken longing from the deepest layers of a man's unconscious. Part 3. 10 attitudes that awaken uncontrollable longing. Number 1. The depth of silence. There is a kind of silence that is gentle yet sharp, seemingly harmless at first glance, but quietly etching indelible marks into a man's mind. This is not the sulky silence of resentment, nor is it a manipulative withholding to control another's emotions. It is the stillness of a deep lake at dawn, its surface calm, while its depths conceal a mysterious world that those standing above can never fully fathom. Jung once said, "Nothing so promotes the growth of consciousness as the inner confrontation of opposites." In love, this deliberate silence is the bridge connecting the unconscious of two souls, creating a captivating and enigmatic obsession. Picture yourself sitting with a man in a cafe, conversations flowing lightly. Then, suddenly, you don't immediately answer one of his questions. Instead, you offer a faint smile, gaze deeply into his eyes for a few brief seconds, and then gently look away. That moment, though small, is powerful enough to send his mind spinning with countless thoughts. He cannot know exactly what you're thinking, but that very ambiguity draws him in fiercely. For what is vague and elusive ignites a man's instinct to understand. Psychologically, this ties closely to a well-known theory called the Zeigarnik effect. People tend to remember most vividly what remains incomplete, what is left open-ended and unexplained. A man won't cling to what you say too clearly or explain too thoroughly. He will forever recall the moment you leave an ellipsis, a gap that he must fill with his imagination and unconscious. We see this clearly in classic films. Why do people endlessly remember the open-ended conclusion of Inception or the enigmatic smile of the Mona Lisa more than clear, detailed plot points? Simply because gaps and silence hold a powerful pull over the human unconscious, compelling us to seek our answers. A woman who masters the art of profound silence knows how to create such gaps in a man's mind. She doesn't rush to satisfy every curiosity or lay bare her entire inner world. Instead, she lets him venture into the darkness of his mind to seek answers, and that very journey ensures he can never forget her. The depth of silence is the subtlest way to plant a longing in a man's mind that he cannot explain. It is a meaningful absence, a silence that speaks more than any words could. But remember, this silence only holds power when it is authentic, when you truly command your inner world rather than using it to manipulate or conceal. The unconscious always knows what is real and what is false, and only when you are truly present in your silence do you become the woman a man can never forget. Number 2. Retreating at the right moment. The art of disappearance. If profound silence is a moment that leaves an ellipsis in a man's unconscious, the art of retreating at the right moment is its perfect evolution. You not only create a gap, but withdraw just in time for him to feel your absence, the moment he thinks he's grasped you. Carl Jung once said, "The creative mind plays with the objects it loves." In love, a woman's deliberate disappearance is that priceless gap, sowing seeds of desire in a man's mind that cannot stop growing. Imagine a breeze passing through a field of flowers, strong enough to make the blossoms sway, yet gentle enough not to harm a single petal. When the breeze is gone, no one sees it anymore, but its traces linger in the movement, in the lingering fragrance, in a fragile yet persistent longing. A woman who knows how to retreat at the right moment is like that breeze. She doesn't stay too long to lose her allure, nor does she leave abruptly to cause hurt. She leaves just enough signs, just enough ripples, to keep him searching and yearning. Many women mistakenly believe that constant presence fosters affection and closeness. Yet, human psychology works oppositely. What is always available is often taken for granted, easily forgotten. Like sunlight, beautiful and radiant, yet rarely noticed. In contrast, the sudden appearance and disappearance of the northern lights, though brief, leaves an impression that lasts a lifetime. Have you ever left without a word, yet left someone feeling they've lost something vital they can't quite name? This ties closely to the sense of loss, a powerful motivator that drives human action and memory. When you retreat at the right moment, a man's unconscious immediately senses a loss, however small. This awakens in him an instinct to possess and hold on to what he feels is slipping away. A woman I know once shared that she always left a date just when the man she loved was most savoring her presence. At first he was confused, but then he found himself unconsciously seeking her out, because each time she vanished, he felt as if a special part of himself went with her. This isn't manipulation, it's the art of activating desires from a man's unconscious. A woman who understands the value of retreating at the right moment never fears being forgotten, for she knows that disappearing at the perfect time is the best way to live forever in the mind of the man she loves. Number 3, keeping an air of mystery. Crucially, she understands that for retreating to have its full effect, it must be paired with an air of mystery. Unlike mere absence, mystery is not about vanishing completely. It's about being present with layers yet to be unraveled. Carl Jung wrote, "We are captivated by archetypes, the eternal images which dwell in the unconscious of all people." A woman who embodies true mystery is the living embodiment of such an archetype, a symbol that activates the deepest unconscious layers of a man's mind. Mystery isn't about pretending to be inscrutable or inflating yourself with cold distance. Mystery is selective authenticity, showing just a part of yourself, not everything. Imagine walking into an ancient house, its rooms with half-open doors, paintings half lit in the shadows. You feel welcomed, yet you can't stop wondering, what lies behind that door? A woman with this energy doesn't need to say much or recount her entire life, but every glance, every gesture suggests there's more yet to be revealed. In psychology, mystery taps into a fundamental part of the human unconscious: the desire to possess what isn't fully ours. When you share everything about yourself, you may create quick intimacy, but you also risk becoming a book that's read,